turn-based RPGs just made a huge impact on the industry and took over the internet in a genre everyone thought was impossible. These devs knew what they wanted to make, and gamers knew what we wanted. And oh boy, is it beautiful to see what creators are capable of making when they're free from the shackles of major company and shareholder control and free to make the projects they want to make. Tokyo Games and Sandfall Interactive are two independent AA game studios founded by ex-developers from Spike Chunsoft and Ubisoft respectively. Both games are very clear passion projects from their teams, as can be seen in many ways, and took huge risks in the gaming industry that would either shoot them to stardom or be financial burdens they would never recover from. The kicker? Both are turn-based RPGs, which is a genre that other companies have even declared dead to the modern audience, which has obviously been proven wrong by the massive success of both games. The 100-line Last Defense Academy and Clair Obscur Expedition 33 both proved to be unique takes on the genre that took the gaming world by storm, still standing strong almost a week after launch. As of today when I'm recording this, Clair Obscur still had almost 30,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch, which is crazy for a week after release. Luckily for us, reception to both games has been incredibly positive, and both teams have even been publicly encouraging people to check out the other's game, which is actually the most wholesome gaming news I think I've seen in my entire life, and a much needed contrast to all the drama online lately. But what exactly is so phenomenal about these two games, and why have they managed to reach such success against all odds? Let's take a look. But before we do, if you're looking for a physical copy, we still have copies of both games available here at PlayAsia. Clair Obscur in particular has been selling out across various stores, to the point that the devs have publicly made a statement. So if you want to grab a physical copy to support their release, now's the time. And use the link in the description to grab yourself a copy while also supporting my channel. They're both selling out quick. So if they're sold out by the time you see this, you can also buy a digital gift card from our store to support the channel while also grabbing yourself a digital copy and play right away. But more importantly, let's talk about the games, how they're similar and how they're unique. I'll go into some spoilers, but these will all be early game spoilers, so don't worry if you haven't finished yet. Let's start with the 100-line Last Defense Academy. Though this game is from an independent studio, it was led by two highly successful creators, Kotaro Uchikoshi, the creator of the Zero Escape series, and Kazutaka Kodaka, creator of the Danganronpa series. Their new studio, Tokyo Games, has released games previously to mixed success. But let's talk about what this game did to become as successful as it is. To start with the obvious, the graphics are just beautiful. I played in docked mode, but I was really impressed at the quality of the models, lighting, and visuals when played on the Switch, a system where I often find the quality of 3D models to be disappointing. In fact, to me, it may be some of the nicest Switch graphics I'd ever seen. I really appreciated how outside of the cutscenes, the sprites were in 2D as well, as that was something I had really enjoyed about Danganronpa, and the switch to 3D in Tribe 9 and Raincode did disappoint me somewhat, as I just didn't feel the 3D graphics had quite the same overall unhinged vibe. In terms of marketing, I do genuinely believe the game's familiar art style is its strongest selling point. Not only that, but bringing back similar music and similar 2D sprites gave it a huge advantage and jumpstart over other releasing games, as Danganronpa fans longing for a new entry had a game to flock to. But as similar as the tone may be, and as much as other devs like Yoko Taro may joke about it being a new Danganronpa, the game is not Danganronpa at its core, even if it does take some of its best aspects and run with them. Unlike Danganronpa's bullet-based class trials, the main gameplay mechanic in the 100-line Last Defense Academy is a turn-based battle system. The turn-based combat system is much closer to the classic JRPG playstyle than Clair Obscur with its real-time interaction, and I can't say the gameplay particularly stood out to me from the demo, but it didn't bore me out of my mind either. I did find it a bit disappointing that if characters die in battle, they don't permanently die, at least so far, but that's pretty normal for RPGs anyway. It was merely a feature I'd hoped to see based on the feel of death and danger just around the corner in these creators' other games. Once it had been revealed that dead characters can revive after a battle, no matter how gruesome those deaths may be, it felt like the stakes had been lowered somewhat. But I am optimistic that if I'm able to go back and play more, the sense of danger and despair would return in other ways via the narrative. This is especially the case when choosing who to sacrifice and when plays a major role in the combat system itself. And I believe the risk and reward would have been much more intense with permadeath, as those decisions would carry more weight. However, it does make sense somewhat to not have moves in battle carry that much weight, because when it comes down to it, the game is a visual novel first, and turn-based RPG second. so you better love reading if you're gonna check out this game. Plus, adding permadeath would create the need to adapt huge chunks of story, and the game already has a lot of story. How much story, you ask? The main feature of the 100-line Last Defense Academy is that the game has 100 endings. And no, these are not cheap or lazy sudden game over style endings. These are fully fleshed out endings with credit rolls. Apparently, the endings vary to such a degree that your decisions can even impact the genre of the game you're playing, creating possibilities for everything from rom-com to horror, giving it a bit of something for everyone. I originally thought the 100 endings was an exaggeration, and was surprised to see reviews state that not only was it true, but apparently all 100 endings are interesting and feel worth the time it takes to reach them all. However, it does mean this game is a mammoth that will absolutely destroy your free time. Clocking a full playthrough at over 120 hours, it is longer than Umineko, okay? So if you're already drowning in your backlog or just don't have a lot of free time, this may not be the game for you. It also depends on how much you were a fan of Danganronpa's somewhat unhinged writing style, as I have definitely seen interesting clips from the game. Sure, some people will be reeling from laughter, but it's definitely not a sense of humor that's for everyone. And if you can't stomach an incest or fetish joke or two, this probably is not the game for you. And no, I am not exaggerating. But if you're familiar with and don't mind the humor in Danganronpa, you'll be just fine. The story is also equally as, if not more bizarre, right from the start, though it's a bit hard to summarize. So honestly, I just recommend checking out the free demo if you're interested in the story, since the demo goes all the way to the end of day 7, just a sizable amount of time to tell if you like it or not. But back to the game's huge scale. The variations for these endings aren't just in the writing either. The game features over 600 CG and likely 2,000 or more sprites. The devs themselves stopped counting. And just why was the game so big in the first place? According to Kodaka himself, he wanted to make something truly insane to compete with all the other high-quality titles being released into the market. He felt that the only way to stand out was by making the developers seem completely out of their minds so that people would check it out out of morbid curiosity. In particular, the story and graphics are where the majority of the effort has been placed. The creators know that the largest portion of their fan base will be players who've completed the Zero Escape and Danganronpa series, two games heavily carried by their writing and graphics, so sacrificing either would only lead to being seen as a poor imitation. And so far, reception to this new narrative and universe has been incredibly positive, with many people saying it's their favorite yet. But the downside to being in production long enough to meet these insane desires, the financial risk was massive. In fact, it's been in development so long that the game was a huge financial risk, to the point that if the game fails, the company will be completely bankrupt. Only time will tell whether or not sales reach the expected threshold. But in a time where even the Final Fantasy VII remake failed to meet expectations, we'll just have to wait for their statement. Most companies would be afraid to take such an insane risk, but in Tokyo Game's case, that in itself became a marketing point. Quantity for the sake of it is never a good thing, and can lead to games becoming bloated or dull. But because they went through so much effort to ensure that quality was never compromised, I've seen more reviews talk about how every single ending felt rewarding than reviews complaining that the game felt bloated, which is impressive for a game you have to beat 100 times. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, on the other hand, is a much shorter game, clocking around 25 hours on average, but with optional side content that can drag playtime much longer. Many are claiming it's already a likely contender for Game of the Year, me, with many saying it's the greatest and most innovative game in a long time. Clair Obscur is a French RPG, yes, there's a baguette, and the first game developed by Sandfall Interactive. It's a turn-based RPG with a dark, somber tone that's not afraid to add some humor here and there, absolutely gorgeous emotional music, and turn-based combat that manages to make the genre feel fresh and exciting by incorporating real-time reactions like QTE during attack skills and dodges and parries similar to Sekiro to keep you on your toes. Though, admittedly, I haven't been able to complete the game yet, the prologue alone is one of the strongest prologues I have ever played in a video game, already having won me over in the menu screen alone. By the time I reached Act 1, I was completely immersed in the world and had a strong desire to see the game through to the end. Whether I'll have time or not that is another thing, but it's the most I've been inspired to keep playing a game in a long time. I was also really impressed by the optional dialogue from the very start of the game. While wandering through the town of Lumiere, there are many optional conversations with NPCs that really help set the tone of the game and provide small hints to what is to come, allowing you to slowly piece things together on your own before the game reveals the truth of the world to you. I was a huge fan of this format, introducing us to the world, as it managed to introduce the world in a way that felt so natural, rather than having characters exposition dump in a way that would feel completely out of place in universe. You know what I mean. The types of conversations that break immersion by saying things that make no sense for someone supposedly living every day of their life in the game world. Having these little hints didn't spoil the full reveal at the end of the prologue either, but made the reveal so much more satisfying when the cutscene dropped. Every year, more and more people are being erased in the Gommage, and people can choose to fight by going on a hopeless expedition, all of which so far have ended in failure, or make the most of their last year of life, waiting for their turn to be erased. By introducing us to the storyline by having us interact in various conversations across town, accompanied by our ex-lover, and learning about the world not through direct words, but by witnessing the overall vibe of their interactions, we become much more emotionally invested in what's actually happening. This is really driven home by the care and attention put into the performances by both the voice actors and mocap actors, who work together to make the characters feel alive. Admittedly, though the game itself really interested me, the art style wasn't so much my thing at first, because I'm just trash and weeb, but it did grow on me rather quick when I saw how much love was put into the animations of each character. It may be a bit more realistic looking than, say, Fire Emblem, but it still has a charm to the animation that I really like. I think it's a great compromise for people who may be interested in checking out games like Final Fantasy that may be more put off by traditional anime-style graphics, as it does a decent job of meeting in the middle between hyperrealism and stylized. It's also refreshing that most of the main cast featured consists of adults in their late 20s or early 30s, and the dialogue isn't afraid to drop a fuck here and there. The tone is mature, without being so simply for shock value, and it's great seeing characters that just act like normal people and feel like they've truly lived in their world instead of exists only for the scenes in the game. Through its unique way of storytelling, the game makes itself stand out in an oversaturated genre and forge its own identity in a way that's never really been seen before, while also feeling comfortable and familiar to RPG fans. We are also slowly introduced to the game's combat system early on, and it does a great job of providing a new twist on the turn-based genre. In addition to attacking, selecting skills or items on your turn, you also need to master the art of dodging and parrying during the enemy's turn, which admittedly was either hard or I have major skill issues. The timing for these dodges and parries is tight, and depends on memorizing cues for different attack patterns, similar to the Super Mario Bros. RPG series. I jokingly remarked that with the tricky timing, it kind of felt like the Dark Souls of turn-based combat. At least so far, there haven't been timers when it's your turn to attack, so you have as long as you want to think and plan your move, but you have to stay on your toes during the enemy's turn, as they will attack ruthlessly, and at times you will die if you don't dodge or parry, no matter how over-leveled you are or how full your HP is. In addition, some skills have QTE sections, further making sure you pay attention in real time and don't zone out. One complaint I've seen over the years for turn-based games is that people these days just don't have the patience for turn-based or find the fights dull and repetitive. But I can promise that these fights felt lively and fast-paced due to these mechanics. Out of all the aspects of the gameplay is perhaps one of the areas Clair Obscur has received the highest praise, which is crazy coming from a turn-based RPG in 2025. It's also been funny seeing the memes that it's the first actual turn-based RPG in years, but Fire Emblem, ReFantazio, Honkai Star Rail, and so many others are just like right there. But anyway, outside of the combat, there's one other area the game really stands out for me, and that would be the game's OST. An absolute crime, really, that the OST doesn't have an official physical release yet anyway. But the devs have generously released all 8 hours for free on their official YouTube channel, as well as uploading it to other services like Spotify, Apple Music, and Bandcamp. Not only is the OST long, but it's the composer's debut in the video game industry. This isn't a game where you have to wait for key moments for the OST to really pop off either. According to the devs, each area has its own unique theme with 3 variations. And are the tracks good? Yeah, they're good! So good, I cried just from opening the main menu and sat there a good amount of time before even starting the game, just taking in the sounds. Many of the tracks have operatic vocals as well, and I can admit I'm incredibly biased since I love singing along to operatic songs, but the vocals add so much depth to the songs that it really pulls you into the atmosphere. Don't believe me that the OST is that good? As of April 29, which wasn't even a full week after the game's release, the OST already passed 1.5 million track streams and became the #1 selling album on Bandcamp. But that's not the only stat that's been absolutely crazy. At its peak, the game even reached over 120,000 active players on Steam, over 100,000 peak viewers on Twitch, not to mention receiving one of the highest ever user-based scores. All of this from a new company taking a risk on a genre that many have claimed is dead. Luckily, they've been proven wrong. Not only that, but the game's price point is also at $50, which is much cheaper than most full-price releases these days, making it much easier to risk your hard-earned finances on. But enough about what makes each game unique. I want to talk a bit on what these games have in common, and why I hope more game companies will learn from them. The first reason being probably the cutest news I've ever seen in the gaming scene. The developers of both games have been promoting each other's projects, even if they're direct competitors in the genre. Instead of worrying about the competition, they've chosen to uplift and highlight each other, recommending players check out the other if they enjoyed one game, and genuinely being happy for the other's accomplishments. This might seem like such a small thing, but for 2 games that released on the exact same day and would inevitably be compared, it's a huge deal that they've chosen to do this instead of getting competitive and trying to outperform one another. And this, I believe, is because they both have one major thing in common, and this thing is the key to the success of both games. The devs of both games were able to spend all their time making the game they wanted to make. No corporate BS about making whatever's trending or guaranteed to sell or predicting the market. But they're both games genuinely made from passion and heart, and you can tell from a glance how much the creators actually care about the games they're making. In a world where so many companies just pump out AAA clones or live service game after live service game to capitalize on short-lived trends that worked before them, it's so refreshing to see these 2 projects stand out as something fresh and different. And in a world where more games than ever before are being cranked out, a game where the devs have immense passion for their game and take these kinds of risks to make something different really stands out. From the first trailer of Clair Obscur, I fell in love with the game and the sheer amount of love and passion the devs put in. The game was a love letter and tribute to many RPGs that came before it, like the Final Fantasy series, without copying them to the point that it felt like a clone. It managed to create its own unique identity that stands out while still feeling familiar and enticing to both fans of and newcomers to the genre. 100 Line might not be quite as fresh at a glance, since it's often compared to previous entries in the Danganronpa series, but it is the game the creators quite literally quit their old company to make. They wanted to do what they wanted, instead of having their creativity limited. Although, in this case, for their own sake, you could argue that maybe they should have held back, even if we're grateful that they didn't. This is especially important when remembering that a lot of games that failed did so because they tried to capitalize on the success of previous games. But by the time they released, the market had already moved on, or the games were compared unfavorably as they just didn't live up to expectations of the genre, or the genre became too oversaturated. Both games weren't created on a small budget, timeline, or scale either. These risks were taken on a mass scale, proving how much faith the developers had in what they were making. And did this faith pay off? You tell me. I'm really happy that both companies are receiving so much praise from the public for standing up for their visions and putting so much time and love into making what they wanted to make. Imagine how much more creative and unique the gaming industry would be if this could happen more often. More creativity and genuine passion instead of making calculated corporate cash grabs is a shift I would love to see continue. And I can't wait to see what these developers do next if they continue to create things based on their own visions instead of what they think is a guaranteed easy sell. Have you played either of these games? What did you think so far? Any other reasons they stood out to you in particular? Let me know in the comments.